Well, hey, everybody. Welcome in. Happy Thanksgiving to all of my friends and family in the United States. We got Thanksgiving tomorrow, so I bet a lot of y'all are getting ready for that. And so I thought we'd have a fun show today. I have Dr. John Stamey here with me this afternoon, and we're going to talk about something that is so incredibly interesting to me and so relevant today, in my opinion. We're going to be talking about, first of all, it's actually the deaths, the assassinations of two former presidents, John F. Kennedy and President Lincoln. And we're going to be talking about Project Pegasus. That is a clandestine. This is alleged, okay? I'm not sure if this has even been admitted to, but from 1962 to 1972, the U.S. government ran an operation called Project Pegasus. And they developed highly advanced technologies allowing for teleportation, physical time travel, and holographic time travel. One man involved in the program claimed it was used to contact former presidents, teleport to Mars, and maintain communication with ETs. All right, today I have Dr. John Stamey here with me. We're going to talk about the possibility of that playing a part in the lives and the deaths of those presidents. Dr. John Stamey has always had an interest in the paranormal. He's an author and runs a number of Comicons, as well as Bigfoot and Lizardman festivals. He co-hosts ScaryCast, a weekly podcast on Blog Talk Radio. And I'm going to bring him up, and we're going to have a really fun discussion today. Hey, John.
Hey there, how are you doing? It's great to be with you.
Thank you. It's so good to see you again. Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always good to be here. And what I like, I got to tell everybody, I'm going to tell on you.
Okay.
You're really a good friend, and I can call you and I can tell you what I'm working on, and you're so nice and you're very encouraging. And you know what? I've got several friends like you, and it kind of makes my world go around when I have my friends that are excited, that get excited about my research. So Jessica, I'm on here because we're friends, and you're a great friend, and you're a great supporter of the research that I do. And boy, I'm going to tell you something. I can't tell it. We're getting involved into something really hairy now, and it's exciting. And I'll call you in about 2.5 weeks and fill you in. Okay.
Okay, John, thank you so much. You're so sweet. You know, I get excited because I'm into the same things you're into. Okay, and that's why we're on that wavelength. That's what's going on here.
Right, and I think we are what I would call paranormal generalists, because we don't, at least on this show, I mean, we don't really focus on one thing so much as we do a broad overview and how the paranormal touches our lives and kind of the adventures in paranormal. So I think the term paranormal generalist, at least I know you do a lot with Bigfoot, but I think the term paranormal generalist is something that we need to look at. It's kind of what we do. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. It's all connected in some way or another.
Yeah. It is. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something that you're very passionate about, and that is looking into the deaths of our former presidents, John F. Kennedy and Abraham Lincoln, and the connection between those two deaths.
That's exactly right. And I've told here's what's interesting is I've told a number of my friends that I'm going to talk about it, and they've all said, well, tell me what's the result. And I say, no. I said, I haven't even told Jessica yet. I'm going to tell Jessica today on the show. And that's what's so great is we're doing what we call the big reveal. So I tell you what, may I get started with a little scientific background here.
Please, please do. Yes,
Okay,
the floor
great.
is yours.
Okay, well, we've talked about and we've all heard the term multiverse, and it really does have a lot of different definitions. And the definition that I use is that we have a universe which is created of many different copies of itself. Now, those copies, none of them are exactly alike. They're
Mhm.
little tiny differences up to major differences. Like here, and this comes from Dr. Ronald Bryan. He was he was a professor emeritus of physics. And this is some of his thoughts. I got a chance. Joe McMoneagle, the great remote viewer,
Mhm.
introduced me to Ron Bryan before he passed away. And Ron gave me a copy of his paper. And in it, he talked about the fact that there are many, many different copies of the universe. I mean, the universe, it's too big to, it's so uncountable. I think it's a step up from uncountable. It's the biggest thing in the world. So, like,
Mhm.
here's an example. We've got two universes. They're identical, except for the fact that my keys are in a different spot, that they're on a different table. They're on the dining room table rather than on the kitchen table. So there's a distance between the two universes of one. Now, suppose I am standing in my kitchen, and then in another universe, part of the multiverse, I'm standing outside. And then my keys are in different spots. So there are two distinct differences between the two multiverses. Therefore, the distance is two. So we can actually assign a number that corresponds with the distance or the number of differences between each of the two universes. Okay.
Okay.
So now we're going to talk about a little bit about Project Pegasus.
Mhm.
This is based on Tesla technology. Everything just about that is of any significance is either based on, okay, here's a big bold statement. It's either based on the technology of Tesla or the technology that we reverse engineered from Roswell 1948. Now that's
Mhm.
what I think.
I,
And,
I, I agree with you.
well, thank you very much.
I
I'm
do.
glad you did. And let me see. I've got I made my notes here because I wanted to make sure I really caught everything. Now,
Okay.
the research question that surfaced when I spoke with a gentleman who wrote the book about Project Pegasus. I'm not going to mention his name. I think we'll let that go back into history because for some reason I can't contact him. Now I'm going to give him your phone. I'm going to give you his phone number after this
Ooh.
call, and then I'm going to see if you can get in touch with him and tell him I said hello.
Well,
I was able,
absolutely.
I was able to kind of like social engineer because I said, hey, how you doing? And I called him on his cell phone. He said, I'm doing fine. He said, who is this? I said, this is Dr. John Stamey. And the reason I'm calling you is I'm a research associate of Sally Ryan Feathers. You know, Dr. Sally Ryan Feather. Oh yeah, I know her very well. She is the head of the Ryan Research Institute. Now, for those of you that don't know about Sally Ryan Feather, her father was J.B. Ryan, who in 1936 coined the phrase extrasensory perception. He was a brilliant man. He was a biologist. He and his wife were both biology professors at Duke University. Well, that was back at Trinity College before it became Duke University, and they put all that money in and made it quite grand. But anyway, they developed the idea of ESP, and they became rather world famous. So anyway, I kind of used a little because I had worked with her on her book, The Gift, and so I knew her pretty well. So it wasn't really too much social engineering. So he decided, sure, I'll talk to this guy. He said, well, do you know about Project Pegasus? I said, well, I saw you and I heard you talk on Coast to Coast AM 2 days ago. He said, oh, really? That's great. I enjoyed that was a lot of fun talking to George Norrie. And he said, well, let me tell you a little bit about it and let me go into some of the things that I didn't discuss. Because, Jessica, I think you know that when those of us like you and I and this fellow with Project Pegasus, when we're working on research, we really can't divulge everything that we know because it probably would be politically bad for us and for the people that we kind of talk about. So anyway, he said, Project Pegasus was set up so that we sent kids back into time. And here is the research question we were trying to answer. Now, it sounded like a very strange question to me until it took me about a year to understand why they did this particular research question. And then I realized how absolutely brilliant it was. Whoever the scientist was that came up with this research question to test basically it's a wayback machine. Kind of like,
Yeah.
Rocky and Bullwinkle. It's kind of it was a wayback machine, and they would send kids back and they would have their experiences. Now, they chose kids because they told them that the experience was not as rough on them as it was for adults. And I can probably believe that. So the research question was, who shot Lincoln? I didn't say anything to him. We were on the phone, but I said to myself, well, now we know who shot Lincoln. He said, I'm going to explain what we were doing and how we collected data. I said, okay. He said, well, they sent us back. He said, I went back 4 or 5 times, and I was there at the Ford Theater when Lincoln was shot. Now, I said, okay, I'll bite. Who shot Lincoln? And he said, you never believe it.
Who shot Lincoln, John?
Yes.
Who
Okay.
was it?
He said 70% of the time it was John Wilkes Booth. 20% of the time it was Mary Todd Lincoln. And 10% of the time it was one of several other people. And
wow. All the different multiverses. Wow.
Well, what they did, while they weren't able to really do an exhaustive study, I mean, they had, 5 or 6 kids. They probably sent back, I think he said around 40 times they sent kids back.
Well, and Andy said that he went 5 times to that theater that night.
Right. And there were other kids that went back there too. But the point is that while it wasn't an exhaustive study, I realized after about a year, here's what they had done. They found, and this is older terminology of mine, they found out that there were multiple time streams, and they sent the kids back to the same spot. 70% of the time, they went back and saw the same thing, which was John Wilkes Booth. 20% of the time, they went back and Mary Todd Lincoln shot him. Now, why did Mary Todd Lincoln shoot Honest Abe? Honest Abe might have been a little too honest with her, and he might have been philandering around, which some people call, he might have been sleeping about. Yeah. And Honest Abe was probably Honest Abe. He might have said, well, Mary, maybe you're not the only one. So that would have given her a reason to shoot her husband. And or she might have known about a plot to kill him, but she wanted to make sure it happened. Now, that's 20% of the time. And then 10% of the time, somebody else shot Abraham Lincoln. Now, why is this important? And I finally realized that they proved the existence of what I would call multiple time streams, or what we would use in today's terminology, the multiverses really do exist. And I think that was a very clever way to put that together. And let me see, because let's face it, let me look at my notes here. So we now know that 70% of the time John Wilkes Booth shot him, and the majority of us live in that 70% collection of universes. So there are a collection of universes, and 70%, based on these results, about 70% of them have John Wilkes Booth shooting Lincoln. And that seems to be the standard thing that we believe in. But there are people in other multiverses who know that Mary Todd Lincoln shot him, and others know that somebody else shot him. So that is the correct answer to the question, who shot Lincoln? Now, okay, now I'm a PhD computer scientist from North Carolina State. And let me tell you why this is so satisfying an explanation. I had never heard anything like this. Now, when we studied project management and software engineering and I taught it,
Mhm.
here's what I would say. I would say, here's a project. Here's a computer project. I want you to tell me how long it will take for this computer project to be finished. And we had, I think, 15 students, and they all wrote down what they thought. And what they gave me, I read it out. 4 days, 21 days, whatever, whatever, whatever. And so I put all those papers down and I said, every one of you is 100% wrong. And they all looked at me like, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, it is situational how long a computer project will take. If it's the beginning of the year and you don't have a lot going on and everything goes well, it might take 17 days. If you have some difficulties or you have some other problems that arise and you have to spend your time doing those, it might take 20 days. If you start having some serious problems with the project and things aren't working right, it could take 34 days. If you have some serious problems, it could take you maybe 45 days, or you might not even get the project finished, or the specifications might change. So what all of you did was you gave me a point estimate. You gave me an estimate that you would hope would be average, but you don't know the conditions. Those conditions kind of dictate how long the computer project takes. Well, those conditions dictate who shot Lincoln. Which multiverse were you in? So,
Wow.
while the average is the single most is the single greatest concept in all of mathematics and in all the world, the average is king. But the average is a point estimate and it's not at all usually accurate. So what we have to do is we have to look at the situation and we have to find out what's going to happen in this situation. What's going to happen in these 70% of the multiverses? There was a clandestine uh, plot to kill Lincoln, and John Wilkes Booth did it, jumped down, messed up his ankle, and go on. But then Mary Todd Lincoln, and then several others. So that is the true answer to the question of who shot Lincoln. And when I
Wow.
was told that, I knew that I was talking with someone that was involved in a research project because nobody else would really describe the results like that. I knew it had just hit me in the face that somebody really knew what they were doing and they were doing research. So I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
So Jessica, any comments or questions?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's profound. Honestly, this is very profound information because 10 years ago, I would have thought this was all crazy talk. Okay. Today, absolutely, I believe it 100%. There's no reason for me not to believe this information at this point with all of the remote viewing I've done, all the shows that I've done, all of the timeline shifts, the Mandela effect, CERN. Okay. And so I do see that there is a concerted effort to switch us over into different timelines and things like that artificially. Which is it artificial? I'm assuming it is, but with
Probably is. Well,
with the teleportation though, I did have a Candy, not Candy, Paranormal Pixie, Laura had a question. Did they go physically? Did they teleport physically or astral travel? Well, it's actually more of a physical thing here because I do have a picture of Andy as a kid, allegedly. I'm not sure if this is for sure, but he claims that this is him. The kid in the middle of the picture right there with the big shoes on is one of the men, the kids that was involved in that program at the Gettysburg Address, actually.
okay. All right. Now let me tell you what I think about the reality of this picture. And I want everyone to hear me loud and clear. This advice came from Dr. Sally Ryan Feather, one of the kindest, most wonderful, and most thorough researchers in the paranormal. She got her doctorate in clinical psychology from Duke University. She and I went through tons and tons of letters of people writing in to her, telling her about their paranormal stories. And I said one day, Sally, do you believe all these people? She said, John, let me tell you what I do believe. If somebody takes the time to write me a letter and spends about $1 on the envelope and the stamp. And they send it to me with or without their name, with or without their address, and
Mhm.
they know that I might put it in a book. They have taken time, and time is a valuable asset for people. They have
You're
taken
right.
the time to do this. And therefore, I have every reason to believe that there is truth in their letters. And I thought, that is the wisest thing
Uh-huh.
that I have ever heard. Because now there are these people, let me go back in my pad, that
Okay.
talk about absolutes. You've got to have this. You've got to have proof of this, proof of this, proof of this. You've got to
Right.
have physical evidence. You, those that believe in absolutes, are 100% wrong. And this is what I said on ScaryCast Monday night. I might have upset somebody. I think I did upset someone, and
Uh-oh.
I frankly don't care. They were talking about absolutes in Bigfoot research, and I had my one of my best buddies, Robin McCrae, on with me,
Love
and
Robin.
I said, let me tell you something. The National Science Foundation has funded to the tune of billions of dollars research in sociology and in psychology. Psychology is nothing but recording of people's opinions. That is all it is. There is no physical evidence of standard research in psychology. They ask people fill out this questionnaire, they get their opinions, and they crunch the data. That's what they do in
Mhm.
psychology. And I said, and furthermore, um, oh, what was it? I had one other story. I forgot what it was. I'll remember it in a moment. But I said the fact of the matter is, you don't always have physical evidence. You sometimes have opinions. And I said, biology is not about counting butterflies like so many of them think it is. It's
Mhm.
about opinions. And we take data from opinions, and those opinions matter. Therefore, you're not always going to have physical evidence. You better get used to it. Billions of dollars every year in research for psychology from the National Science Foundation. They obviously, and I remember what else I said. I said, think about Sigmund Freud's book. Sigmund Freud's great book on the nature of personality. Jessica, that was nothing but opinion.
Mhm.
Absolutely nothing but opinion. But
Yeah.
over a long, long time, well over 100 years, we have become to conclude that Sigmund Freud may have been right on about 80% of his opinions, which is an astonishing amount
Yeah.
of being right. So the whole point is you can't run for absolutes and say, well, if you don't have it, there's nothing there. There's a lot
Right.
of stuff there. People's minds are, it's a playground for reality, a
It
different
is.
reality than we have in the world. Like I'm sitting here looking at a fence with some greenery on it. Because I see it, that's great. But I also have a reality in my head. Don't you? Question mark.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as the paranormal research field goes and the Bigfooting, let's just take Bigfooting, for example.
Sure.
A lot of that research comes from personal experiences and it's not documented. There's no, video of it or anything like that. We go off of people's experiences. So it's not all about the numbers all the time
Well,
and
it
having
is
it
about, I'll say
documented.
it's about the numbers, but when you collect data and that data is opinion data, well, that's as valid as anything else. And that comes directly back from what Sally Rhinefeather, she was a PhD in clinical psychology from Duke. And she understood that a lot of things that people say are opinions or they are personal experiences. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
Betty and Barney Hill, the grandparents of UFO experiences.
Yeah.
Just because there is not a photograph of what happened to them doesn't mean that it probably didn't, but it probably did happen. And I believe it did. Same thing with Roswell. There are no photographs of all that of that crash.
Well, they
But
say there's not.
well, I don't think there are any photographs from what I've been told. There are no photographs of the actual descending and crash. There are a lot.
Correct.
There are a lot of photographs after that.
Yeah.
But and there are experiencer tales about how the Army and Marines treated the residents of that Roswell area where it happened, and they terrorized them, said you will not tell, or you and your
Yeah.
family will be goners. So I mean, there's no physical reality, and then look at our entire judicial system. Our courts, our trials are based on a preponderance of evidence. Now, what is evidence? That can be an eyewitness account. That is not an absolute. That is an eyewitness account. That's me saying to you, the jury, this is what I saw. And it's up to them to believe me. And they either
Wow.
will or will not, but they'll take my opinion and they will make something of it. They will create a reality based on my opinion. And these absolutists need to grow up. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'll say to you. And they're in that realm of what I call skeptics. And I'm gonna conclude my comments here with what I think about skeptics, because I want everybody to understand what is a skeptic. A skeptic is, in general, someone who does no research. They want to say one of three things about your story. Number one, oh, it didn't happen. They'll say that. Number
Yeah.
two, they'll say, and I'm going to use a word from that great comedy series, Green Acres. They'll say, oh, that's too fantastical to believe. How could anybody believe that story? It's too fantastical.
Yeah. That's the go-to. Yeah.
Do
That's the
that's
go-to. Yeah. That's the
but
go-to comment.
well, no, I think you'll laugh, but it's true. Here's the real go-to comment: attack
Okay.
attack the person who's telling you the story. Oh, Ingo Swann, he couldn't have been a remote
Yes.
viewer because Ingo Swann was a drunk and a womanizer.
Yeah.
Just because he was a drunk and a womanizer, if he was, he probably was. But Ingo Swann was considered by Joe McMoneagle the greatest remote viewer in history.
Yes.
And
I was
so
taught by his methods, actually. So, yes,
really,
he was
yeah,
amazing. Yes.
he was. And so the whole point is, skeptics will use three ways to try to discredit someone's story, and none of them have to do with research, or they will flat out lie. That's a fourth one. And I can share a Christopher Davis story from the Lizardman.
Okay.
There were a couple of guys, and I don't remember where they're. It's buried in my upcoming book, Lizardman Companion. There were a couple of these guys. I think they were from Canada, and they have a podcast, and they were trying to discredit the whole Lizardman thing. They said, "Oh, well, why was he out in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning? Was he drunk? Had he been out with some girl? Was he high? That's probably
Right.
what it was."
It's defamation. Okay. It's always defamation of character. Yes.
That is attack the man.
I see it all the time.
So now let me tell you, but by the way, they're from Canada. They've never been down to Bishopville. I went to the McDonald's in Bishopville where Christopher Davis worked. And I talked to the manager who'd been there forever, and he even remembered Christopher Davis. I said, let me ask you something. Did people ever have to work late? He said, listen, back in those days, we were the busiest McDonald's on Interstate 20 in South Carolina. And it was a madhouse. And what we would many times do is we would ask employees to work a couple hours extra. We would pay them regular time and give them tons of food. And that's what's interesting is Christopher Davis came home from his experience with several bags of Big Macs. Okay, so there you go.
Not a bad gig.
And that is the explanation. That is, as our buddy Matt Delf would say, that is boots on the ground research. It's knocking on a door and it's getting the answer. It's not sitting around attacking the person. And that's what they do sometimes, but they'll lie too. And so I just wanted to get that barb out, because you know what? I'm here to search for the truth. I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to search for the truth because Jessica Jones does the same thing. That's
right. I do. And and I saw some interesting documentaries yesterday on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And I have noticed several Mandela effects in regards to his death. And one of those was actually the car that they were riding in. A lot of people remember the car that he was riding in when he was assassinated as having 2 rows of seats, but now there are 3 rows of seats in that car. And there's just several things that are a little off. And as far as people's memories go of that.
You're 100% right.
And yesterday was the actual anniversary. I think it's the 59th anniversary of the death of President Kennedy. So it's timely to talk about this.
It's so wonderful that we're doing a story about President Kennedy. And now may I proceed to part 2 of our discussion today?
Please do. Yes. I'd love that.
First of all, there are 2 research questions to answer about John Kennedy's death. The first one is, who physically shot John Kennedy? And the second question is, who had reason to engineer this? It wasn't, I don't believe it was anybody who engineered it, and I'll explain who that is, and I'll give you some percentages. I did some thinking about it, and I called a couple of folks who are quite perceptive, who I would call psychics, and I got kind of a consensus of some percentages, because we have the 70, 20, 10 for Lincoln. Okay. So we have 4 real possibilities for who shot JFK. First of all is Lee Harvey Oswald, the overwhelming favorite. Another one, a very tiny chance, is Jack Ruby, who actually killed Lee Harvey Oswald in prison before he got to spill the beans. And I'm sure Lee Harvey Oswald had some beans to spill. He had some Pintos. He had some Great Northerns. He had lots of beans.
Black-eyed peas. Yeah.
Exactly. And
butter beans.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's the Lizardman. Okay, the Butterbean Shack is the Lizardman. Okay. So now, then another potential is the gunman who was on the grassy knoll. Now, Jessica, I don't know about you, but I stood on the grassy knoll and I got chills.
Oh, yeah. I did too. I've actually been there in Dallas. I went to, is it called the Repository? I think that right. I went there. I did the whole tour of the entire place. And I felt it. There's an interesting energy about that place for sure.
I wouldn't call it interesting. I would call it spooky. But anyway,
it is spooky.
I'm glad we agree on lots of stuff, don't we, Jessica?
We do. Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to give you. I took kind of an armchair survey. I asked 3 of my friends who have psychic abilities, and I had already put my answers down, and we were all very close. We believe that there's a 75% chance that Lee Harvey Oswald, that his bullet shot John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Okay.
We believe there is a 2% chance that it was Jack Ruby. And 2% is pretty close to 0. But Jack Ruby, by virtue of the fact that he 100%, at least in our reality here, that he shot Lee Harvey Oswald, there's a little tiny chance it was him, but, not really. Then there is a 13% chance that it was the bullet that came from the grassy knoll. And there's a 10% chance that it was someone else. And I'm going to make a comment. Everybody was out to shoot John Fitzgerald Kennedy that day. I mean, they really were. And I mean, it's just amazing to me that the Secret Service never figured this out. That's one question that I don't understand. And I haven't ever heard. It's like, why didn't they? There was so much, there was a lot of chatter going on. You know what I mean by chatter, right?
Oh, yes, I do. I mean, I've even seen videos, John, of where people were saying that even Jackie could have been the gunman as well under some sort of MK Ultra mind control. Okay, so there's a lot of, I know it's a little out there, but I'm just saying there's a lot of different opinions on it. Everybody's got an opinion.
With that's my 10% somebody else.
Yeah, could be.
Because now, as you know, and as we all know, Jackie Kennedy was having terrible marital problems with John Fitzgerald Kennedy, right?
Similar to Lincoln's wife, huh?
That's
just saying.
That's the parallel that I was drawing.
Oh, wow.
He was philandering around. So
Oh
now
my gosh.
I want to move to part two. Who
Okay.
had reason to engineer all this? Because we never got to talk to Lee Harvey Oswald. We never got to talk to Jack Ruby. It's
Mhm.
interesting. They weren't grilled immediately, and why is that? Why were they sitting around sitting ducks waiting to be shot? Why is that? Who was in on that one?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of a rhetorical question. We don't know the answer. So
Probably a lot of people. Probably a
okay,
lot,
well, I
unfortunately.
have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candidates of who wanted John Kennedy dead enough that it worked.
Mhm.
Number one is Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. I heard something and I checked it out, and it's very true. Later that week, the week of the Kennedy assassination, Time magazine was going to come out with a front page story that Johnson was involved in two extremely important scandals that was really going to end his career.
Yeah.
One is that he was influence peddling and with senators, and he was paying them money to vote a certain way. Because what's the vice president? The vice president's the head of the Senate.
Mhm.
So it's the Billy Saul Estes scandal. The second one is WLBJ, the
Mhm.
most powerful radio station in Austin, Texas. And it seems as though LBJ was responsible for the Federal Communications Commission not granting other FM licenses and AM licenses in Austin, Texas, which is a pretty big city. It's the capital of Texas. And that's right, isn't it? It is the capital of Texas. Did I say that right? I've lost my mind. All right, ask the people in the chat rooms. Just is Austin the capital of Texas? We got to
Is
do
this
some
a
fact
trick
checking.
question? Is this a
No,
trick question?
no, I just want to
Okay.
make sure it is. I mean, just ask them in the room. Just someone make sure. I want to make sure we get it right. But I know Austin's where the University of Texas is. So anyway, LBJ was under a lot of fire, and I mean that was going to be a huge incident that he is influence peddling and directing the FCC not to grant any other licenses in Austin, Texas. So we've got LBJ. Number two, we've got everybody's least favorite director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. And boy, he didn't like Kennedy, and Kennedy didn't like him. I don't know why Kennedy didn't fire him, but he might have had too much dirt on Kennedy. And then, of course, there is the mob, the American United States mob, who, unlike the Irish mob that loves Kennedy and his family, the mob, he was after him. So they might have done it. And then there's the international mob, which would include Cubans because of because of the impending Cuban Missile Crisis. They might have wanted to get rid of JFK. And then there was a random hitman. Okay, who knows? And then was the fallout from Marilyn Monroe, and I'm gonna tell you, there was some darn fallout there. So here are the
Just a little bit.
percentages that my kind of skull group put
Okay.
on who really shot, who was behind this conspiracy. It's a conspiracy of the highest nature. It was a conspiracy. They conspired against him. This is not like saying, "Oh, adrenochrome is a conspiracy theory." No, one of these groups, and perhaps multiples that even worked together, were responsible for the conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy. 30% Lyndon Baines Johnson, 30% J. Edgar Hoover, 20% the United States mob, 15% the international mob, 3% random hitmen, which I think is zero, but you got to have that
I
in.
probably not.
And
Yeah.
then 2% is the fallout from Marilyn Monroe. So that gives us our 100%. So this is like saying, was it John Wilkes Booth and that whole conspiracy theory that was responsible for Lincoln? Or was it Mary Todd Lincoln that was responsible for Lincoln? Or was it
Hmm.
somebody else? So those are our percentages. So that, okay, while the percentages are a bit of a guess, I think they're reasonable in saying who was responsible for shooting JFK. And that is, in my opinion, my humble opinion, the true answer to the question, because it depends on which multiverse you're in. Now,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you on a little bit on the spot. I'm gonna ask you a
Okay.
question, Jessica. Who do
Okay.
you who of those of that bunch, and the top three being J. Edgar Hoover, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and the United States mob and the Cuban mob, who do you think, which multiverse are you in? Which one of those four do you think was responsible for the death of John Fitzgerald Kennedy?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm already being watched and looked at. So I guess I can just say whatever I want at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've already dug myself a hole doing shows like this. So I'm just going to say it was an inside job. Just like with all my remote viewing targets, a lot of stuff, it's inside jobs with the government.
So that would
I've
mean,
always assumed LBJ. I think he had something to do with it, but that's just my opinion. I wasn't alive back then. So,
I
um,
think, here's what I think. I
what do
think it
you
was a
think?
combination of LBJ and JFK,
Mhm.
LBJ and J. Edgar Hoover. I think the
Yeah.
two of them conspired to make
Actually,
sure that he was gone. And I think,
actually,
that's what I think.
well, I think there's somebody else involved too. Who was the head of the CIA back then? Do you know?
I've just drawn a blank.
I think it was George Bush Sr., right? I should not be talking about this.
Well, here's the deal. I don't know, but I think it's pretty common knowledge that it was one J. Edgar Hoover
Okay.
or LBJ, and I think it was both of them because I especially think LBJ because his career was history. He was going to jail for that WLBJ AM and FM licensing thing. He was going to jail for that, and
Oh
Billy
my gosh.
Saul Estes. He was going to jail
William
for Billy
knows.
Saul Estes. So I mean, it was a mess, but
Yeah.
and so he ends up being president. For goodness sake, look who we get. I mean, everybody wants to complain about Donald Trump. Donald Trump won, and so whatever. Anyway, but that's what I think. And let's see,
Not
what
to
are
get
we doing?
political on here today or anything. We're just looking into Project Pegasus, okay?
We
And
are.
CERN, because John, this has huge implications actually on our lives today, because there's someone somewhere doing some kind of program that's switching us over into different timelines according to their own agenda. Wouldn't you say?
Well, let me tell you a story about 2012, and I'm going to tell you a couple of things that will blow your mind. There, the act of moving is, or the result of it is the Mandela effect. Okay,
Yes.
but let me tell you what happened to me in 2012. You ready?
Okay, I'm
So,
ready. Yes.
the movie 2012 comes out. I watch it with some friends. We love it. It was kind of funny. Anytime you got a monk on top of a mountain ringing a gong and he gets a tidal wave going over him, it has to be kind of a funny deal, kind of a funny movie. All right. But anyway, so we're doing all that. And I remember prior to 2012, a couple of things. I had a good father. I had a good mother too. They were great.
Yeah.
But my dad, when I was a young kid, when I was, I think, 5 years old, 6 years old, I got my first watch. A lot of people don't know what a watch is unless it's an Apple Watch. But I got a watch. Okay. And
Okay.
so what happened was, now this is like a 5-minute story, but this underscores what I believe happened. All right. So my dad, it was some night in the middle of the summer. I think it was around June 23rd, which is the longest day of the year. I was supposed to go to bed at 9. He said, he told my mom, he said, I want my son to stay out here with me tonight. And she said, okay. So we sat in the swing and we were swinging and it was about 9:30. He said, son, tell me how bright it is. I said, yeah, it's still kind of bright. because the sun just went down. And so we sat around and we waited, and about 10 o'clock, about 10 minutes after 10 o'clock, it was dark. He said, "Son, you just noticed something, that at about 9:30, the sun goes down, and at a little after 10, it gets dark." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay." So now, because he made me read my watch, it was great. So he said, "All right, son, I'm going to show you something later." I said, "Okay." So I remember it was actually about the 21st of December. My dad came home early. It was like 4:15. And I said, and he came in. I said, "Dad, are you okay?" He said, "Oh, I'm fine, son. Do you remember I told you in the middle of the summer I was going to show you something?" I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "Let's go out and get your jacket and let's go out and sit on the swings like we did." So about 4:30, the sun went down. He said, "All right, son, what time did it go down in the summer?" I said, "About 9:30. He said, "Well, why did it go down at 4:30 this afternoon?" Now, 4:30. I said, "I don't know." He said, "It's because the earth rotates and spins and turns, and days are shorter in the winter than they are the summer." So that was my first science lesson. It came from my dad. I mean, Jessica, how much better could it be?
It doesn't get better than that. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Okay, so now let's fast forward to the summer of 2013. I'm
Okay.
selling life insurance, and I go out to see Miss Starlinda. And I looked at my watch, and it was at 8:15, and I said, "No, that's okay. I have no fear of knocking on someone's door when the sun is up." So I went and knocked on her door. She was there. She was really nice. And I came outside, finished, and I said, "Well, I got time for one more." And I looked around, and it was getting dark. I said, "This is strange, because it's supposed to stay bright and light until 9:30.
Yeah.
Oh, it's daylight savings time." No. So I get home and something bothered me a lot. And I started figuring out that 8:30, when the sun went down, was actually 7:30 in real time, because we spring forward. We set our clocks ahead and out.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
the next thing I did was I called my aunt. She was 84 years old at the time. I said, "Hey, Aunt, how you doing?" She said, "Fine. What's up?" I said, "Let me ask you something. Do you remember on those long days in the summer, what time did the sun go down?" She said, "Oh, it was about 9:30. I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, thanks. Love you a lot. Bye." So I corroborated with her and several older people that the sun used to go down before daylight savings time at 9:30 on the longest day of the year.
Hmm.
Now it goes down at 7:30. What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah. It's a little weird. It's a little
So
weird.
something,
Yeah.
and the first thing I thought was, God, why wasn't this the biggest news in the world?
Yeah.
And I realized, well,
I noticed
maybe,
stuff like that too.
yeah,
Yeah. And also the placement of the moon, it seems like it would come up around the same spot every night, and just move slightly at the same time. And it's like all over the place right now. I've noticed. And I keep thinking I'm losing my mind. And anytime I bring it up to somebody, they're like, well, the moon moves around in different patterns. I'm like, but it doesn't move around that differently every night. So I don't know
right.
what's going on, John.
All
I'm
right.
going into
Well,
different
I,
multiverses.
I do know what's going on is that we
Okay.
seem to have slipped into a different multiverse. And
Hmm.
it might be, and gosh, don't everybody yell at me, but it might be because the earth was destroyed,
I've
or it
heard
was
that
made
too.
or it was made uninhabitable in 2012
Yeah.
by a comet or something, and we might have been just switched over. So I don't know,
Yeah.
but there's something different about and then here's I'm going to close with this little story. So I'm talking about this at one of my conferences. There's a young man there, and I'm talking about the Mandela effect. He said, "Well, I don't know about the Mandela effect, but when you talk about things changing," he said, "when I was in high school, I stayed with my grandmother, and I would drive her into the mall up in Maryland. I said, okay. He said it used to take at least 45 minutes. And when I went to college and came back and I went to her house, and she said, take me to the mall. And I did. And it took 5 minutes to get to the mall. And she hadn't moved. She said,
Yeah.
something's wrong. And I can tell you this. When I was getting my doctorate at North Carolina State, the longest leg of the journey was from Lumberton to Fayetteville. And what I would always do, because this was in 2004 to 2006, I would always stop off in Lumberton and get some coffee because it was always like an hour and a half to Fayetteville. Why is it 35 miles now?
Well, I don't think that the method of measuring miles has changed since then.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is things have changed about the surface of the earth, about the time of events and everything. And I guess I've gotten to the point, it's like, well, okay, if everybody's gung-ho about it, I'll be gung-ho about it too. No point in making a big deal about it. But the fact is, things have changed. And it is an element of the multiverse. Now, would you, I'm gonna ask you this question. You were talking about CERN. Would you please, because you've done probably more research on CERN than I have, what were you saying might be the connection between CERN and all of this?
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, I actually even had a picture to pull up today of CERN because I think this has something to do with a lot of this. The CERN is a Large Hadron Collider. Okay. And they say there's that one in Switzerland, and CERN, Switzerland. I believe that there are multiple CERNs, Large Hadron Colliders, all over the world.
I think at last pitch, I heard that there were 30.
Yes, there's one in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, from what I've been told, and I've heard rumors there could be one in Georgia. They're all over the place, and that's kind of close, from Tennessee to Georgia, right here. But they're all over, and I think that when they're turning these things on, they're switching us over into different timelines. There's something really wiggy going on about all these timeline jumps and timeline splits, and it's really messing with our lives, our everyday lives. And I feel like there could be whoever's doing all of this, they know what they're doing. And it has something to do, I believe, with this Project Pegasus, going back into time and seeing the different timelines, and then putting us on the trajectory of the timeline that whoever's in charge wants us to be on, perhaps. I can't prove any of this. I don't know. This is just my opinion. This is for entertainment purposes only, John.
Okay, now it's really funny. That is exactly what I said on ScaryCast. I said, This is, if you don't like this idea of multiverses and all that, then you can just say this is for entertainment purposes only. But then after I got climbed on about absolutes, I can tell you what it used to be like back when I was a kid, and now it's radically different. The sun sets 2 hours earlier than it used to. I mean, come on. I remember, and I have people that remember that as well. Again, that is memory, and that is not somebody's, whatever. That's not somebody having any proof. So all absolutists, you live in a terribly boring, dull world. You're not looking at the whole world. I feel sorry for you. If you think you've got a great world, look, Jessica and I and Robin McCrae and all of us, we have a fantastic world of all kinds of possibilities and all kinds of things that we remember, we know. Do you agree with me, Jessica?
Absolutely. I think everybody in chat agrees too. I'm not saying everybody, but most people agree that we live in a very interesting world, and something is just off, and it's been off. And also, there's also the element of this being presented to us in the media, and especially in children's cartoons. Okay. In children's cartoons, there are two that I know of for sure, like Spider-Man. There's a Spider-Man cartoon movie called Spider-Man, the Multiverse. And it's about the different Spider-Mans from different universes, from different multiverses, meeting together with each other. Also, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they go from alternate realities, and they all end up meeting when two of the dimensions overlap occasionally. And so this is, and the Avengers as well. And these things with Project Pegasus called jump rooms that Andy was referring to in some of his talks, and he's written a book. these jump rooms are shown in television shows and in movies, and they say that you just walk into them and you're teleported to Mars or anywhere, anywhere all over the world
Right. And
or all the universe. Yeah.
right now, I've got a question, or at least a favor to ask the people in your chat room. If
Okay.
anybody finds a copy of the Project Pegasus book, buy 2 copies. I will pay you. One goes to Jessica and one goes to me. So if anybody in the room, just send 2 copies to Jessica. I will PayPal you the money for that, because Jessica, we both need a copy of it, don't we?
We do. Thank you.
I mean, that website's
Sure.
that website's
That's
long
sweet.
gone. It's gone. Well, no, we need it because we got more research to do. Whether anyone's doing research or not, I mean, I know I'm going to continue to do. I am addicted to research. I am. I got that addiction probably 10 years before my North Carolina State days. I just love it, and it's it's a wonderful thing to solve problems and to ask questions and see what might be the real basis for fact.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I've got to say.
Wow. Yeah, this is a lot to think about, John. It's a lot for the audience to think about today, and something else we can talk about over Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow with our
That's exactly
families,
right.
right?
You're exactly right.
Yeah. Well, and my question is just like in Walking Lightly in chat, he was saying there's different strategic places. Maybe this is for the CERN, that Large Hadron Colliders. They're all over the planetary grid. Are they all sitting on ley lines? The energetic places of high strangeness all over the world. It's all about energy. And I mean, what is the purpose of all of this with all of the timeline jumps and CERN being turned on? Is it just a form of control, John? What do you think? Is it just to control where humanity is going? Is it for the good? Is it for the bad? What do you think?
I'm sorry, I just rolled my eyes. It's like, golly, I have no idea. I guess I'm at a low enough level that I'm trying to just figure it out, not at this higher level. But you've asked me, I'll start putting some of my brain cycles to that and see. Although I don't know that it's worth putting my brain cycles to it,
I
because
know it makes their brain hurt.
there's too much out there that we need to investigate, that scientists at universities should be investigating, and they're not.
Why are they
Um,
not, though?
well, because they are all tied to the National Science Foundation and those grants. So that's what they do their research on. And the National Science Foundation has more of their own lackeys that approve these things. So the National Science Foundation is kind of like the governing body, and their people approve the grants. And so those grants have got to match what those people reviewing the grants want. So therefore,
Yeah.
you've got a self fulfilling prophecy. And the National Science Foundation, I don't care what you guys think. I think you're bad, and I think you're wrong. I mean, some of your research is good, but some of it is just wrong. You're not promoting creativity. I'll never forget my boss. He was a very famous computer scientist. His name was Jean-Louis Lassalle. God rest his soul. He was responsible for a lot of my success because he promoted me and he liked me. He thought I did a good job. But he said, I went to an interview, John, at a university, and they asked me about my research. I said, well, what I want to do is this, 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 and this. You can read what I've done. And he said he absolutely didn't make the next round. He said, that's not what they wanted. All they wanted to hear about was what I had done. They didn't want for me to tell them what I wanted to do in research, because that's the whole goal. Is like, what do you want to do? What do you want to research? And it's not counting butterflies. I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
sir, you who know me, you know exactly who I'm talking to about counting butterflies. I don't call it, that's not that great, that much of a research. I mean, figuring out what's going on at the Large Hadron Collider, figuring out about multiverses and time streams and their effect on humans, that's important. And in 100 years, we will have answers to those questions, and your little research on counting butterflies will be buried. Yeah. I'm sorry,
Oh
Jessica. I'm
gosh.
sorry for such a whatever. You forgive me?
I forgive you. No, I
Thank
think this is all great. It's all relevant. I think this is amazing. Just putting the information out there because something has been feeling off for quite a while for a lot of people out there, and it doesn't make sense. The Mandela effect. I cannot get enough of the Chick-fil-A changing their name from CHIK filet to CHICK. I talk about that all the time, and that's one of my biggest Mandela effects. Okay, but there's so many Mandela effects, and it's so interesting when you start talking to the people who remember things one way, just like you. There's people that don't remember them one way, so you can kind of see who was on that timeline with you in the past, as opposed to who's on the time. Now we're all on the same timeline, so the best thing we can do, John, in my opinion, is to live your highest timeline. Strive for the highest, greatest timeline that you can. Live a life of beauty and excitement and fascination and happiness. Just try to be happy. Try to do things you love. There's not a whole lot we can do about this stuff, y'all, except for strive for your highest,
right.
best
Right.
timeline, right?
Okay. And let me share with everybody what I'm trying to do. I'm restarting my Comicon business. So for me, the highest and best use of my time turned out to be finding two partners to do Comic Cons with in Ohio. And I mean, I'm thrilled about it. So my highest and best use is to do better and better events in more and more places with more of these exciting people. And one of them, Jeff Craig just got married. Congratulations, Jeff Craig. She's a lovely lady. I met her. And then also working with John LeMay on the Ruidoso Encounter, which is our UFO um, Comic Con out in Ruidoso, New Mexico, right outside of Roswell. Can't wait. That's just going to be the most. That's going to be as
Wow.
much fun as you could possibly have. And maybe
Yeah.
we'll ask Jessica Jones and Matt Dell to come out and talk. I bet you'd come talk in
Oh
Ruidoso.
yeah.
Okay,
Totally. I'm
very good.
there. If you invite
Good,
me, I'll
good.
be there.
Okay, great. Well, we'll see if we can afford to get you out there, but we'll do our best. And Jessica,
Yeah.
thank again. Is it okay if I say thank you so much for having me on here? And I love being on your
Yes.
show.
Thank you, John. That is so sweet of you. And I love having you on the show. You are just full of knowledge and bright, wonderful ideas and things that make people think. Okay, things that make me think and maybe we're kind of answering some of the questions that we all have as to like what's going on. What is going on in this crazy world? Are we crazy? No, I don't think we're all crazy. Maybe a little bit, but yeah.
We're
um
not, but it's important that we continue to research and explore this great world of ours. It's a great world. I don't care if we're in a different time stream. It's still a great
yes.
world. Wouldn't be anywhere else right now.
Exactly. And with the people that I'm around right now. I love this. I'm having a great time. I'm living my best timeline right now, and I hope everybody else will too. And I hope that John, I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving tomorrow, and I hope everybody in the chat, everybody watching today and tonight, I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving here in the United States, and yeah, everybody in the chat's loved it, John. Yeah, everybody's loved it. And before we go today, I would really like to dedicate this show today to my brother Ben. Ben, his birthday is today, and he passed away in a car accident several years ago. And so this is my brother Ben. This is his birthday today. So happy birthday to my brother Ben in heaven today. So I just wanted to dedicate this show to him. So thank you, John, for being here on this amazing day. And
Thank you. I have truly enjoyed it. Now tomorrow I'm going to do Thanksgiving, and then I got to work on a new book with John LeMay. I've got to get 3 chapters to him by the end of next month. So I got to work, but I'm working so that people can enjoy this new knowledge that we're trying to put out for everybody.
well, thank you for having all these Comicons and all these festivals. I know I spoke at your Georgia Bigfoot Festival. I believe that was in May. I had so much fun there, and I met so many great people. And yes, I hope that you'll come back soon. Okay, I think we've got you on the schedule for next month.
Yeah. It's
So we're gonna
a little bit of a different topic.
a little bit, yes.
It's really cool.
It's gonna be
like
spooky.
it's kind of a dream come true for me. It is, and I'll explain why. I'll take 2 minutes, and I'm gonna tell everybody why next time. It is a dream come true. I guess I am living the life, and Jessica, part of it is thanks to you.
Well, thank you, John. It's going to be awesome. So, we're living our best timeline, okay? And that's where we're headed. All right, everybody. Well, y'all have a wonderful, safe, happy, loving Thanksgiving tomorrow, and I will see y'all next time. Thank you, John. We'll see you when you
Thank
come
you.
back. Okay? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Bye, y'all.